Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. It did not take them long to level these accusations against Russia, and the accusations are that Russia is guilty of committing crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Well, when was the first time when you heard that those accusations leveled against someone? I heard it the first time when it was the Nazis. After the Second World War, that term, the whole term, I think it was invented, because before that it was not. And the crimes against humanity was leveled after the Second World War. I think that was used in Nuremberg trials anyway. So that means that if it was determined by the United States of America already, or at least the accused of that, we'll find out when they're going to have Nuremberg trials number 2. And we'll see if the outcome would be the same. I am very much inclined to see and to think that that would be the outcome of the suspects or the alleged criminals. So let's read this article, which comes from Associated Press. You can find it in many other sources. And it comes, or better put, who could be the best messenger for such an idiotic claim? But the Vice President-elect of the United States of America, Kamala Harris. Now, just so you know, Kamala Harris was out of the Democratic Party primaries with less than 1%, if I remember correctly, of the vote. So Biden, who won the nomination, the party's nomination, he decided to get as his running mate someone who got 1% or less of the votes in the party. Why wouldn't you get the one that has the highest, so you together have more approval on your party? I don't know. Anyway, they won with a success of, I can't remember how many millions of votes, 80 million, 90 millions, I can't remember. But anyway, good for them. The problem is we have these two guys in charge of the United States of America, and they decided, or at least she says it. I have my little gut feelings telling me that the decision was made in a group, in a committee, and the committee with other, they decided, and they probably, they conducted investigations and the assessments, and they said that they determined that Russia committed war crimes and crimes against humanity. All right, let's see what's going on here with this article. This article comes from Associated Press. And it is from today, the 18th of February 2023. US says that Russia has committed crimes against humanity in Ukraine. And here we have the below 86 IQ Vice President of the United States of America. And this is my personal assessment of her abilities based on her statements. It's not something that was determined, but I have the right to have my own assessments and say so. According to the freedom of speech that we have in the Constitution, don't we? And an assessment is assessment, or an opinion is opinion, however we want to call it. All right, so let's see. In München, the United States has determined that Russia has committed crimes against humanity in Ukraine, Vice President Kamala Harris said Saturday, insisting that, and I'm quoting, justice must be served, quote unquote, to the perpetrators. Well, I totally agree with that. But while we are at it, why should we just start with this? Why shouldn't we start with, let's say, the bombing of Yugoslavia? Should we start with that? Or maybe I have a better idea. Let's start with 1945, August 6, and we can go to August 9. And you tell me under what kind of definition those would come. You know what I'm talking about? That's called, the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Civilian population, mind you. So under what kind of definition would those come? That's my question. So let's start with that first, and then as we are at it, we can come with other wars, including an ending, maybe, not even ending, with the ones in Europe in 1999 in Yugoslavia, when that sovereign independent country was attacked by a coalition of countries not being attacked. So I'm going to discuss that later in other articles that I have ready here for this video. So speaking at the Munich Security Conference, Harris said that international community, all right, if that's international community, who that? Has both a moral and strategic interest in pursuing those crimes, pointing to a danger of other authoritarian governments taking advantage of if international rules are undermined. All right, let's stop here. So it has a moral and strategic interest in pursuing the international community. As international community, she lumps everybody in looking at an issue in one way and has the moral and strategic interest, okay, in pursuing those crimes. I totally agree with that. But my point is, why should we stop only at those crimes? We have some living former presidents and prime ministers of certain states that could be also, morally and strategically investigated. And then we go to justice must be served if we are to be real. But since we're not, that's the way it goes. And then we said, pointing to danger of other authoritarian governments, that implying that Putin's government is an authoritarian government. And I should point to things here for this person. Putin was elected, that's one thing. And the second one, his approval rating is double of your boss or your running partner. That is 79%, and yours is 42%. Biden's. I made a video yesterday regarding that. So Putin has an approval rating and trust rating of 76 and 79, and Biden has a 42. So he basically doesn't have the authority to rule since he has a minority of people supporting him. That should be going, and that includes you. With that mouth, it reminds me of what's his name, the guy from California. Anyway, instead, her political career started between my lower limbs. Anyway, so let's move on. That's all right, but anyway, I don't remember. I think he was married or whatever. But we're talking about here about morality and coming from someone like that. Anyway, let's move on. We all make mistakes, I guess, repeatedly. So we have here, and then it says, taking advantage of international rules, no? If the international rules are undermined. Okay, let's go and look at the legitimacy of the NATO bombing in Yugoslavia. So I did a little bit of research here, and this is the easiest explanation. And it says the UN Charter, if you remember, the bombarding of Yugoslavia came from a few NATO countries, I think 10 of them, and they bombarded Yugoslavia right here. Bombarded Yugoslavia, the country, the independent sovereign country that Kamala Harris is talking about. They bombed it 72 days, I think, or 74 days, to change something that they considered that was not right. And that didn't have the international, what is she talking about here? The international rules, there's a violation, and I'm going to go right here. And it says here, the UN Charter is legally binding on all United Nations member states, which all those countries that I will mention right now is Belgium, Germany, France, United Kingdom, Italy, Canada, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, and the United States of America. These were the countries that bombarded an independent sovereign country of Yugoslavia, having an internal affair. But hey, what can you do? They had to stop something that was occurring over there, according to their information. So let's move on here. So including all, so the United Nations Charter is legally binding on all United Nations member states. The ones that I mentioned, they all are signatories, including all members of NATO, because they have each signed it. Article 2.4 of the Charter prohibits the use of force by UN member states to resolve disputes but with two specific exceptions to the general prohibition. So these exceptions they mention here. The problem is, I'm going to give you the argument that this guy's NATO brings, and it's going to be a weasel argument. You're going to see it. So NATO did not have the backing of the United Nations Security Council to use force in Yugoslavia. Further, NATO did not claim that an armed attack occurred. So these are the two specifications, 1 and 2, Article the prohibitions here. NATO did not claim that an attack occurred against another state. However, it advocates, this is their justification, it advocates contend that NATO actions were consistent with the NATO United Nations Charter because UN Charter prohibits unprovoked attacks only by individual states. Do you hear that? So since NATO is not an individual state, but it's an organization, it was allowed to do that. But NATO was formed by individual states that were the signatory of UN Charter, correct? So this is what I say right here. The principal legal issue remains, however, since NATO as such is not a member state of the UN, whether the member states of NATO, the United States and the European powers that sent armed forces to attack as part of NATO bombing campaign violated the UN Charter by attacking a fellow UN member state. NATO did not have the authorization of the United Nations Security Council. That's another requirement. They did not have it. So however you want to turn it, it's like, okay, there's a crime, it's something over there. Let's say it's the neighbor, and the neighbor does something over there. You are supposed to call the police, and the police, determines what's going on. Or, you call the law, the international community, the law, the United Nations. Now, if the United Nations says, no, that's something that it's between them over there, we can't authorize that, and you decide, so you're a signatory of that, but you say, you know what, I, together with the neighbor, go over there, punch their neighbor in the face, we do what we need to do, but then you say, well, we didn't act against the rule, because the rule of us said if we go as a country, but we went as a group. So they formed a group, we go by NATO. And this is NATO. We go as a group, and there's nothing in over there that's saying that a group of countries. But the group was formed by individual countries, which is me, the neighbor. So this is a weasel way of justifying something that was not authorized by United Nations. Anyway, from a legal point of view, from United Nations that Kamala Harris is talking about, moral and all that, doesn't seem kosher in 1999. So for them to come now and call this as it is, let's investigate it, but on the other hand, let's go back to you. You didn't have the UN any authorization, so basically you were illegal in doing what you did. So, or I can say like this, I'm a country, and tomorrow I say, well, for about 75 days, not 72 or 71, 75 days, I consider myself a unicorn, and I will attack that country as a unicorn. And or I change I'm a unicorn, I identify as one, I go and attack, do things, come back and say, now I'm Emil, so now I'm a signatory of United Nations, but for the time of 72 days, I had a 75, for the 72, I was a unicorn, so by the definition, I didn't sign as a unicorn any UN charter I didn't agree with. So you can't charge me, because 75 days I was a unicorn, okay? Or, I form a group, and then I say, this is not a signatory. Technicalities, basically. It's like, I don't even know. I don't have to bring more, with examples or, or kind of scenarios here. The point is, we have some hypocrites here. But don't get me wrong. Everything should be investigated. But not only the Russians, the Americans, the Ukrainians, the French, the Brits, everybody. If we are to believe that she's honest about it, and she talks about morality doesn't pick and choose. Okay, it doesn't pick and say, okay, my uncle raped someone, but because of my uncle, okay, your uncle raped someone. Oh, must be. We gotta be here moral. Morality dictates here, and basically, this is what I see happening. It's been happening for a lot of times. And in the past, and that is because this dictates. So when she talks about authoritarian states should not follow the same, how should I put it, model, well, we can only look at United States and Mexico. Oh, what are you talking about? Look about the American-Mexican War, or Mexican-American War. Remember, it was about Texas. The same thing. The problem was this, not the American blood was spilled on the Rio Grande, as they said, we gotta react. It was all about Americans living in Mexico and Texas wanted to be independent because the Mexicans were hurting the American citizens that migrated legally because the Mexicans said, come over, help us, blah, blah, blah. You just look into that. The point is, the Americans entered to defend their connationals living in another country. That's what it was. Like the Russians entered in how do you call it, Ukraine to defend their connationals. Like Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia in the Sudetenland to defend their connationals. Like Hitler invaded Poland for the Danzig residents. They were German and their community over there. So you see, if you go back, I think that the Mexican-American War was first. And then it was the one with the Germans, and then it was the one with this, and then it was the one with that. So again, who learned from whom? So there are many examples. So maybe the Russians or the ones now, the authoritarian regimes right now, we're going to learn probably maybe from the Mexican-American War. Why should they just look at Russia? That, right? Or maybe they can look at the Germans, which is, they did the same. This is our guys here. We're going to go and take care of them because you abused them. Oh, these are our guys here. We're going to intervene here because you abused them. Just a few books away or a few clicks away, and we still have the information. We're not yet at that point where we are on the way. So that's ongoing, where the history is, not necessarily modified, but a certain kind of historical events are just, and others are, and they are promoted by, let's say, a certain kind of, beautiful programs like History Channel. When they pick and choose, they make a point and they say, wait a minute, how about that historical event related to your documentary? Why didn't you put it over there? Maybe because they wanted to reach a certain conclusion, and all those historical events would have contradicted the conclusion these guys wanted to push, the narrative. So that's how you rewrite history. Ignoring certain things, and you think that people will be too busy, which they are, or too lazy to look into it, or simply disinterested. If they have the beer in the refrigerator, if they have the right TV shows, stupid as they are, or the stupid games on the TV, yes, and they can have a job that they can go over there and get the little money that they have to give it to the tax collectors. They have the credit card. That's fine. That's good. A lot of people, most of the people, I would say, enjoy this kind of lifestyle in the West, at least. How do I know that? And just to cover my ass, I will use Albert Einstein. And now everybody should shut up because I'm using that guy, He said, well, I think 99% of the population, the whole population, human population, all they need is just a backbone. The brain is, kind of like an auxiliary. Not needed. But I think it was Einstein, so can't say anything about that. He must be right. So, anyway, this is it. Kamala Harris is the messenger that tells us that we should be moral, and we should be looking only at this particular incident, not outside of it, and definitely punish the perpetrators if you find beyond any reasonable doubt that a crime was committed, by all means. But I will go even further. I will challenge this Kamala Harris, and I will tell her to look back in other events and figure things out over there. All right, and we're gonna be moral, and we're gonna. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.